Hi everyone, welcome back. In my previous video, I showed you how to edit grid records by using different cell editing types and modes in VueGrid. You can find that video link from the description section below or the card shown above. In this video, let's see how to edit grid records using a customized dialog. I will open my existing Vue application where the grid is rendered with local JSON data and enable the dialog editing mode. You can get this downloadable sample link from the description part below. I will show you how the grid is rendered in this example. As you can see, when I double click a grid record, the grid fields are displayed in the dialog for editing. The reason I prefer to use a customized dialog for editing is to display unbounded fields from the data source on the dialog in addition to the default fields that are bound through eColumns directive. I can customize dialog fields by using the template property. Here in this dialog template, I'm going to display 5 columns, namely order ID, customer ID, freight, order date, and ship address. Notice here, the columns freight and order date are not bound to the grid column directive but available in the data source. Now, to open this custom dialog on the editing mode, I have to define the template property on the grid and assign the template function. Within this template function, I can access the record details of the grid through data variable during add and edit actions. First, I will import the bootstrap CSS file to the style section as I am going to design the template using bootstrap. Let me start designing the columns in the template function now. For this, I'm going to use textbox for the order ID column, DropDownList for the customer ID column, NumericTextBox for the freight column, DatePicker for the order date column, and TextArea for the ship address column. To make use of components like dropdown, NumericTextBox, and DatePicker in the dialog, I need to install them in my application. I will install the Vue dropdowns package in the terminal using npm install ej2 vue dropdowns command to start using the dropdown list. Install Vue inputs package using npm install ej2 vue inputs to use NumericTextBox. And finally, install the ej2 vue calendar package to use DatePicker. I will import DropDownList, NumericTextBox, and DatePicker plugins from their respective packages and register them in my application using Vue.use method. Under the edit settings object in the data method of script section, I will define the template. Moving to the template design, first I will add the div elements with appropriate bootstrap classes. Here, I will define the text box for the order ID field and bind its name attribute with the order ID field from the grid data source. Next, include v-model directive to bind data to the text box accessing order ID values from the data variable. For the customer ID field, I will define the drop-down list component and bind its name attribute with customer ID field from the data source. Next, include v-model directive to bind data to the drop-down list by accessing customer ID values from the data variable. Now, I need to bind data to the drop-down list accessing from the grid's customer ID field. I will use the DataTable function to retrieve unique customer ID values from the grid's data source. To use the DataTable function, I must import it from Syncfusion ej2 data package. Now, inside the computer property of the template, I will define a new method with the name customer distinct data and return the unique data values from the customer ID field using the DataTable function. Then I will assign this method to the data source property of dropdown list and assign the appropriate mapper fields to the dropdown list as per the grid data source. Next, for the freight field, I will define the numeric text box component and bind its name attribute with the freight field from the data source. Then I will include v-model directive to bind data to the numeric text box by accessing freight values from the data variable. For the next field order date, define the DatePicker component and bind its name attribute with order date field from the data source. Next, include v-model directive to bind data to the DatePicker by accessing order date values from the data variable. Finally, for the ship address field, I will define a text area and bind its name attribute with ship address field from the data source. Next, I will include v-model directive to bind data to the text area by accessing ship address values from the data variable. Here, I will add CSS class to align the label. Now, let's move to the order ID field, which is the primary key column of grid, must be disabled during editing mode. For this purpose, I will include disabled attribute to the text box and assign it with a boolean value based on the isAdd property. This isAdd property is processed internally within the grid source and it will return either true or false value based on the add or edit action. Now the designing part of the template is over. I will show you the output in the browser. As you can see here, when I double click the grid record, Dialog opens with the column I had defined inside the template. Observe the two additional columns, freight and order date here, which I did not define within the eColumns directive. You can edit these columns and update it using the Save button in the dialog. Now let me summarize what we have seen so far. I have shown you how to edit the grid records by using a customized dialog. I have included custom components like DropDownList, NumericTextBox and DatePicker in the dialog using a template. You can also check our user guide documentation link provided in the below description section to learn more about editing in our Syncfusion Vue Grid. Post your comments if you need additional information about any grid topic. Thank you for watching this video. If you find this video useful, give a like and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos. Thank you.